everyone, no matter where or how you are joining us, awesome to be with you. Welcome to the Ridge Community Church.
If it's been a long time since you've been to church or this is your first time ever, we would like to give you a special welcome and just say we're really glad that you are with us here today. This here is Jody. Jody's on staff here at the Ridge, and I'm simply known as Jody's husband. We're fortunate that we get to hang out with you here today as we walk through today's service all together.
Absolutely. And hey, if you want more from us, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Maybe that's how you're watching right now. You can also follow us on social media because we really think church isn't just a one and done, once a week kind of thing. We believe we live a life of following Jesus in the best way possible when we encourage each other and do life together all week long. So if you follow us on social or on YouTube, some of the stuff you're going to see is just hopeful or helpful content from us that we hope serves you well, or maybe just serves somebody well that you want to share it with also.
This week, we're in the second week of a series called GOAT, and you're a sports fan, and you know that GOAT stands for Greatest of All Time. Now, this series isn't about a current sports star or a sports legend. What we're doing is we're taking a look at a verse in the Bible, and we're seeing that when we study it, we learn it, and we understand it, it can be a total GOAT for changing our faith.
Yeah, and so we're really excited to hear more from our lead and founding Pastor Mark in just a few moments. But before he comes on screen for you, we're actually going to start with our band, and they're going to play a very unique song. Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you're going to recognize some of the words in here, and they are words directly out of the GOAT that we're talking about all series long. And the special thing about this song is the tone that it's going to set for everything else that we'll do and talk about today. So if we're on in the background and the kids are running around, which happens at our house a lot, or if you're at the gym or whatever it is, this song is 4 minutes long. So I challenge you, just give us 4 minutes to slow down and focus in on the words. Let it just kind of wash over you and really set the pace for the rest of this service together and see what happens between you and God.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. In green pastures he makes me lie down. He restores my soul and leads me home for his name, for his great name. Surely goodness, surely mercy, right beside me all my days, and I will dwell in your house forever and bless your holy name. You prepare a table right before me in the presence of my enemies. Though the arrow flies and the terror of night is at my door, I'll trust you, Lord. Surely goodness, surely mercy, right beside me all my days, and I will dwell in your house forever and bless your holy name. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are on my side. Oh, and even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, shadow of death, you are on my side. You're on my side. Oh. Surely goodness, surely mercy, right beside me all my days, and I will dwell in your house forever and bless your holy name, and bless your holy name.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
Today, we are continuing in our series called GOAT, Greatest of All Time. I want you to think about the number of great athletes who have or are wearing the number 23. Okay, here's one. Now, even if you're not a soccer fan, you know David Beckham. He is one of the greatest soccer players of all time. Here's another one. Now, you may not know this person, but this is Bob Gainey. And Bob Gainey is one of the greatest hockey players of all time. He played in the 70s and the 80s, and he won multiple Stanley Cups. Now, this third picture, I don't even need to say anything. This is kind of drop the mic, no discussion. He is the GOAT. And then finally, this picture. This is Big Ben. Okay, he wears number 7, but he's great to me. Well, the GOAT that we're talking about has nothing to do with the greatest athletes to wear the number 23. We're talking about Psalm 23. Psalm 23 is one of the most well-known, most quoted scriptures in the entire Bible, and our goal in this series is to take the GOAT, and we're going to walk through it together, because the more we understand it, and the reality is many of us know but don't understand it, but the more we understand it and apply it, we're going to discover it's a great way to connect with God. And no matter where you are in your faith journey, I think we all want to personally connect with God. I want to begin by reading Psalm 23 together. And I don't want you to just read it out loud. I want you, wherever you are, to do this as kind of a prayer. I want you to pray this as a recognition of whatever you believe, whatever your struggles, whatever your doubts, whatever your fears, whatever the whatever in your life, is that you have a shepherd and that he cares for you. So let's read this together. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valleys, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup, it overflows. And surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, if you missed last week, we talked about how we are the sheep in this story, which is not a compliment, by the way, but it's a reality. And that's not a bad thing, because if we're willing to admit that we're sheep, we open ourselves up to our need for a shepherd. And not just a shepherd, but the capital L-O-R-D is my shepherd. Today, we're going to look at the next part of Psalm 23 and talk about something that most of us, we're just not very good at, but that we all desperately need in our lives: rest. Now, let me prove it to you that we aren't very good at rest. When someone asks you, how are you? What's the most common response? Busy, crazy busy. Now imagine if you ask someone, how are you? And they said, I'm just too rested. I am too relaxed. I mean, you would think, what's wrong with you? You need to get help for that. Busy has become a badge of honor, a way we communicate our value and worth to others. But the problem is that most of you are living your life at an unsustainable pace and you don't even know it. And you've been telling yourself things like, well, this is just the way life is, or I'm doing it for my family. And this is my personal favorite. It's just a season. Think about this. Every summer is busy because, well, it's summer. You got to pack everything in. And then fall hits, and the kids are back in school and all the activities, so that's busy. And then it'll be Christmas time, and it becomes the busiest time of the year. And all the time we keep telling ourselves, it's just a season. It's just a season. And the reason you keep telling yourselves things like this is because, well, everyone else is living this way. It's normal. But what if what you consider normal is actually hurting you, your relationships, and the way you're able to experience life in general? I think this is why David, who wrote Psalm 23, right after talking about who the shepherd is and what our lives can look like as we let him shepherd us, the very first thing he talks about is this idea of rest. He writes, he makes me. And makes me is this idea of he settles me down, doesn't force me. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. Just look at the images for a minute. Green pastures, quiet waters, refreshes. I mean, doesn't that sound good right now? The idea of green pastures. This represents a place where the sheep, they don't need to move from place to place to be satisfied, because shepherds knew that it's when they're resting that the sheep are growing. And that's the goal for their sheep. Tired, stressed out sheep, they don't produce lambs or wool, and they don't gain weight. And this principle is the same for you. If you're tired or constantly stressed out or anxious or worried, it might be normal, but it's not healthy. And you don't need me to tell you that because you already know that. So it makes sense the shepherd is going to lead us to a place of rest. Now, let me define what rest is. Because when I say the word rest, you probably have this idea of a life of just sitting back and doing nothing, or of never working, taking naps all the time, and everything just somehow gets done. And you're like, Mark, that's just not realistic. Let me just say this. That's not what true rest is. So let me define what I mean by rest. Rest is not inactivity. Rest is the condition of your soul. It's not a life of not doing or accomplishing anything. True rest is a condition of what's going on inside of you. In fact, when you experience true rest, you'll actually be more productive, more impactful, and more at peace. True rest is the pace of your life plus having the right things in your life, and that's the goal of what David writes in these verses. So I want to give you 3 things that have to happen in a sheep's world to make it so that the sheep is healthy so they can experience true rest. Here's the first thing. The sheep has to know the shepherd is close. Well, we spent most of last week talking about the importance of understanding who the true shepherd is, because David knew that without this kind of rest is impossible. And so he kicked off the goat by saying, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. The capital L-O-R-D, it's written in all caps because it's the Hebrew word Yahweh. And Yahweh is this highest description that they had for God, that he's all powerful, he knows all, is everywhere, and is eternally self-sufficient. And so David writes, Yahweh, the self-sufficient one, is my shepherd. And because he is, and because I can trust him, to quote Aaron Rodgers of all people, I can R-E-L-A-X, relax. When predators come looking for the sheep, they're defenseless. And so they're going to run away unless the shepherd is close, because they can trust the shepherd to protect and provide for them. You see, what calms the sheep is not the absence of predators. It's the presence of the shepherd. Here's a cycle that we tend to get caught in when we experience a predator in our lives. So a predator comes, and a predator can be a job loss, it can be health challenges, it can be a relational fallout or tension at home or at work, uncertainty about the future. I mean, these are just a few. But a predator comes, and our tendency is to run. And our running takes many forms. It can take the form of we just try to handle it on our own, or we try to somehow to control the situation. But the problem with running is that most of the predators that come into our lives, they're bigger than us. And they are things we have very little control over. This is why our running always leads to anxiety and fear, which leads us to running even harder. And this cycle just keeps going and going and going until eventually it goes long enough and it leads to exhaustion. I wish we didn't have to worry about predators coming into our lives. But Jesus even said we have to deal with them. And so what calms the sheep and what calms us is not the absence of predators, it's the presence of the shepherd that makes the difference. So rather than running away from the predator, which is our tendency, we need to learn to run to our shepherd because he's close. Last year, we did an entire series on anxiety, and you can binge watch this on our app or YouTube channel. And the passage that drove the entire series said, I'm just going to paraphrase it, don't worry about anything, even though you have a lot to worry about. Instead, tell God what you need and thank him for all he's done. If you do this, you'll experience his supernatural peace. And this is rest. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. God is my shepherd, and the shepherd is close, so I can lie down in green pastures. Second thing is that there can't be friction in the flock. In sheep world, they must be free from friction with other sheep in the flock. You see, I didn't realize this, but sheep are very social animals. If one of the sheep is positioning themselves to be the alpha sheep, and the other sheep are afraid they're going to steal their food or something else, they will not rest if there's tension with other sheep. And you know what? The same is true with us. We can't experience true rest when there is restlessness in our relational world. This is especially true in our relationships with those closest to us. Years ago, something happened where one of my family members wronged Donna and me very deeply. And then after doing it, they just continued to pile on with more wrong to the point where we had to set up some pretty tough boundaries in this relationship. And it created such a mess that every Christmas I'm reminded of how bad the fallout is, as our family hasn't been together for Christmas in years. Now, have I forgiven them? Yes. Did they ask for it? No, and they probably never will. But as a Jesus follower, I'm called to do my part to lessen the friction as much as possible in my relationships, even when I've been wrong. Recently, I've been kind of wrestling with this whole idea of what does it mean to reconcile with someone who doesn't care about reconciliation? And I'm not really sure what that answer is, but I know I need to take some step in their direction because not only does Jesus call me to do it, but I also know that friction in my relationships hinders my ability to experience true rest, and it does in yours as well. I want to add one more thing to this idea, and this is so important. This one actually breaks my heart because I see people creating so much unnecessary friction, and it's under the guise of, well, it's necessary. Let me both encourage and challenge you. Don't cause friction because of your opinions, beliefs, and rights. And if your reaction is, well, yeah, but that's just how I feel, you being right has become more important to you than your relationships being right, because you're engaging in a way that creates friction with others, and you already know this. Listen, I'm not telling you not to have beliefs and opinions about things. I do, and I hope you do. I'm just saying, don't cross that line of them being more important than people. You see, when people come first, it actually allows you to engage in a way that I think attracts more people to them. And if there is any place that should be the model for this, it's the local church. The local church should be filled with people who have different opinions on things because we have different stories and backgrounds. But despite those differences, it doesn't cause friction. It strengthens us because we are all better for it. Plus, I know it's possible because I pastor a church in Wisconsin full of people who are deceived Packer fans. And I love the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are the Shepherd's one and only team. And so I'm right, and if you're a Packer fan, you're wrong, but I love you anyway. So let me ask you a couple questions. Is there friction in any relationship in your life? All of us have a relationship with friction, so I know the answer is yes. And maybe for you, it's a parent or a spouse or a teenager. Maybe it's an ex or a family member, someone who disagrees with you, or maybe it's a coworker. But then let me ask you this question. What step can you take this week to begin the process of healing that friction? God wants to bring healing into our lives, but we have to deal with the friction. Final thing is you need to actually follow the shepherd. I want you to notice the words David uses to describe the shepherd-sheep relationship. Here's what he said. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. And he says makes and leads. You see, when we follow the shepherd, even though it's hard, even when it goes against what we're used to, following the shepherd will eventually lead to a refreshed soul. And look at where the shepherd's going to lead us. He says, by quiet waters. Remember the word picture? The word picture is about sheep. And if sheep are thirsty, they're susceptible because they are, as we said last week, they're not very bright. And so they might try to drink from running waters and get washed away or drown. Or there's stagnant water, and it might be poisonous or germ-filled, or worse yet, someone could have poured a bunch of bush light in it. See, they aren't bright, so they might drink from any water source they can find. So what does that mean? You need to be willing to follow the shepherd. And I know that's hard for some of you. I mean, it's still hard for me. And I know it's hard because you like to decide your own fate, or you're someone who likes to pull yourself up from the bootstraps kind of person, or you just want to do it your way because you think your way is the best. But remember, this is written by David, who definitely had that same personality bent. But David reached a point in his life where he realized through a bunch of different experiences that when we follow the shepherd, he will lead us to a place of rest because he wants and knows what's best for us. A great question to ask yourself is, what shepherd are you following? Because we're all following one. Are you following your news feed, your political party, the current of culture, or you're listening to people who aren't encouraging you to look to God? You know what shepherd you're following by looking at the kind of waters you're drinking. Every summer, I stay at this old seminary for a few days just to do some work planning, and it's a dive. I mean, the buildings are really old. The internet connection hardly ever works. You know, one time, my entire room was overrun by German beetles where I had to end up checking out early. But they have this small lake right by the seminary, and there's never any boats on it or anyone on it. And what I'll often do is I'll take a raft and I'll just float on the water with my eyes closed. And I'll just listen to the sound of the water. And it's so quiet, yet loud at the same time. And it's just so peaceful and relaxing. The shepherd that David is inviting us to follow, he'll lead us to quiet waters that'll lead to him refreshing our soul. Now, when he says soul, the soul, that is the deepest part of you. Your soul goes beyond even your emotions. It's the deepest part that knows that there is a God and knows that God is there and that cries out for rest. Your soul is what is probably anxious more than anything else right now in your life. So the refreshing of your soul, it's not going to happen unless you know that the right shepherd is leading you to the right places. And if he is allowed to lead you, you can just take a deep breath. So here's what I want to encourage you with. In a minute, I'm going to give you one phrase that I hope will stay in your mind all week. But first, I'm going to give you an exercise that I want you to do, well, forever, frankly, but at least for the next few weeks as we go through this series. Here's the exercise. Read Psalm 23, the goat, first thing in the morning and last thing before you go to bed. Now, I gave you this assignment last week. Why? Because how you begin your day in many aspects determines how you're going to interpret and respond to what the day brings. And the day might bring challenges, victories, or whatever it may be. So if the first thing you do is check your emails and your texts, or you get on social media and you start looking at everybody's posts, and it's like, oh man, they're on vacation in Arizona, which, by the way, huge shout out to our growing Arizona contingency. But it's like, oh, they're on vacation in Arizona, and I'm stuck here in this, and this can be all sorts of things. What's going to happen? You're going to start your day in a bad mental space. You're literally going to be drinking from the poisoned water. I also want you to do it right before you go to bed for the very same reason. I want you to start your day with it. End the day filling your mind with something better than the news or whatever it may be. So read the goat, and as you do, think about things that are going on in your day, and then turn them over to your shepherd. And hey, if you're having trouble sleeping, you can always count sheep. But do whatever it takes to get up in the morning and do 23 first and do 23 last thing before you go to bed. I recently came across this illustration in the book Directions by James Hamilton. And Hamilton writes, before refrigerators, people used ice houses. And this just goes way back to the time where this is how they would preserve food. And ice houses had these really thick walls and no windows and a tightly fitted door. Well, in the winter, when streams and lakes were frozen, these large blocks of ice were cut and they were hauled to the ice houses and they were covered in sawdust. Well, often the ice would then last well into the summer. So one day, this man lost a valuable watch while working in the ice house. And he searched all over for it, going through all the sawdust, but he couldn't find it. Well, his co-workers, they also looked for it, but they couldn't find it either. A small boy who heard about their search slipped into the ice house during the noon hour and soon emerged with the watch. And all the guys are amazed, and they were like, well, how did you find it? And the boy said, I closed the door, and I lay down in the sawdust, and I kept very still, and pretty soon I could hear the watch ticking. The question is not whether God is speaking to you, but whether you're being still enough and quiet enough to hear Him. So how does it happen? 23 first thing in the morning, 23 at night, but what do you do during the day? I want to give you a phrase that I heard from Tim Harlow, pastor of Parkview Church, that's just always stuck out to me. And here's the phrase: stop gazing and start grazing. Instead of constantly trying to stare through the fence at the greener grass on the other side, and isn't that easy to do, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, look at what they have and look what they get to do, and they have this perfect this and that, and they don't have the problems and challenges that I do. Last week, I told my story of running myself into bad burnout and how God used 23 as a big part of my healing process. Well, one of the things that I came to realize was causing my burnout was I'm a gazer. It's like I'm looking around like, well, we got to keep growing because this church is, or we have to keep doing this and we don't want to fall behind, and kind of look at that and look what they're doing and look at this and that, and just kept going and going and going. The grass is always greener on the other side. And yeah, some sheep are restless like that, and they're roaming around all day long, always out there looking for the next thing. But let's just be honest. When you see other people and you get impatient that your grass is not as thick, you may feel lack, you may feel want, you may feel need. You don't feel like David said, I lack nothing. But this is why I want you to stop gazing and start doing something else, grazing. Because you see what you're looking for. And when you start grazing where you are and you see all the good things that are going on, you will begin to realize that your shepherd has and is doing a lot of good in your life. But please remember that the goal is not for God to refresh your circumstances so that they are like everyone else's. The goal is to refresh your soul, this part of you, which is what we all want and we all need. What's interesting is that Jesus would often contrast between sheep and goats, which, calling Psalm 23 the goat, kind of messes that up. But they're all the same family of animals. But even though sheep are not very bright, sheep at least could be led. Goats were always on the bad side of the equation. And so Jesus would say this: God's going to separate us in the end. He's going to separate the sheep from the goats. And the sheep go with him, and the goats don't. Why? Because goats can't be led. They can only be driven. So which one are you going to be? Are you going to let him lead you? Or are you going to have to be pushed? Or maybe you just wander off. Can you stop gazing and start grazing? Because it's the difference between a tired, worn-out soul or a refreshed one. Let me pray for us. Father, I thank you for this topic that for most of us, when I say the idea of rest, it just seems like such an outer reach sort of topic. And Father, just this idea that in the goat, the very second thing after talking about the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing, you talk about this idea of rest. This place of where we're active, but the condition of our soul just in this place of peace and rest. Father, we admit that we would love that, but we're unsure of how to do that. And so, Father, I pray this week that as we read Psalm 23 in the morning and at night, and we think about this idea of we stop gazing and looking around us and start grazing, that our soul, that you would work in our soul in a place that we would begin to just feel this place of peace and refreshing. Father, I pray that this week, for those who just aren't aware of how close you are, you would make them aware. And God, for those of us who have friction in our relationships, that we would take some very specific steps this week and to move towards healing in those relationships. And I pray that you would open up some great doors for that. And Father, as we just kind of move forward with this whole idea, that I would pray that we would not settle for just normal, which is kind of busy and keep going, and then we go to exhaustion, but that we would break the cycle, because the goal that you have for us as our shepherd is to lead us to this place of rest. May we allow you to lead. And that's hard, God, to admit, to allow you to do that. But may we take some steps this week, allow you to lead, and experience more of what David said, a refreshed soul. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
So if you're going through a season right now where things are just not going right and your faith is being tested, Psalms 23 is the greatest encouragement, because you use it to speak God's truth over you and to comfort you and to reassure you that He loves you so much, and He will go through many lengths of making sure that you're able to get through this tough season in your life. And so if this resonates with you, if you're experiencing this right now, I ask you to think about those things as I speak Psalms 23 to you right now. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters, and He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in this house of the Lord forever. So I hope that you really, really lean into those words. Whether you're here or you're online watching, ask God to bring truth to you and to pour His love over you, because you will get through this tough time. So I just ask that you give praise to God right now and sing this next song with us. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe, we live for you. We live for you. Sing holy, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Oh, yeah. Worthy of every song we could ever sing to you. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever bring. We live for you. Oh, we live for you, Jesus. the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. So holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Oh Lord, fill me up with your love, yeah. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, Lord.
Man, that song is such awesome affirmation of God's love for you. So I hope you heard that, and I hope it becomes kind of an earworm just running through your mind all week.
It really is a great song, and if you want to live out part of it where they say, God, lead me in your love to those around me, we've got a way that we can help out with that. Right here at our Greenfield campus, we're going to be having a meal packing event, and it's a great way for you, maybe you and your family, your Ridge group, or that person you're investing in, to all come together, pack some meal kits, and serve those around you.
So these kits are going to go to Guatemala through one of our international partners called Lifeline. Maybe you've heard us mention them before because last year we met Pastor Davey, who serves with them in Guatemala, and he's starting up a church there in the foothills of a mountainside. And he's not just starting that church, he's actually driving up into the mountains to bring the whole idea and concept of who Jesus is and what he did for us to people that have never heard anything about it before. And last year, your generosity allowed us to, on your behalf, purchase a van so that Pastor Davey and his team can drive up into the mountains in a safe way and get there more reliably and on a more regular basis. Now, these meals are going to allow him to develop those relationships even more because he directly is going to take our support and go and continue to serve and love on those people in the mountain.
Now, if you've been a part of one of our meal packing events in the past, you know that we mobilize hundreds of people to pull this off. Now, this year, because of COVID, things unfortunately are a little bit different. Because of social distancing, we're just not going to be able to include as many people as we had been able to do in the past. So if you want to join in, please make sure to sign up early and grab your spot.
Absolutely. And our vision, as you've heard us say, is to bring the hope of Jesus into every home. And the thing I love about this so much is the every word in our vision statement, because really we've committed to not stopping at the end of our subdivision or our city. Every home means we're going to care about everybody that Jesus cares about. So we're going to make sure with this meal packing event that we get to go international and focus on every home, whether it be here locally or globally too.
We're going to move in now to a time of today's service where we bring our gifts to God in the form of an offering. Giving is a really big deal for a lot of people, and giving for us is really a big deal too. Because when we give, we're saying to God, we get it. We understand that everything we have is because of you. And this is our way of showing when we give just a little bit back that we get it all. So if you're not quite there yet, please let this moment pass you by. But if you are, and for the rest of everyone, we just encourage you to give digitally, like Joni and I do, by following the instructions on your screen. And as you do that, sit back, relax, reflect for just a little bit on the blessings God has given to you and your family. We'll be back here in just about 30 seconds.
Well, hey, as we wrap up our time together right now, I want to remind you and encourage you to keep engaging with Psalm 23, our GOAT, and specifically, like Mark challenged us this week, to not just take some time to physically get the rest you need, but to find ways to connect to this psalm to really let your soul rest in the truth of who you are because of what you believe and the power that that can have over the rest of your life. So find that real soul rest. And if you want some help or just some reminders and resources to do that throughout the week, can't encourage you enough. We've created a whole website just to get these tools to you in an easy way. There also, if you've got our app right at the very top, the top link in our app, as soon as you open it up, you'll find them right there. We've got everything from Bible reading plans to a verse image if you want to make that your wallpaper on your phone this week. Just an awesome way to connect with this again all week long.
And we'll see you back here next week where we take a look at a certain part of this verse that really is the easiest to apply in our everyday lives immediately. But until we see you next week, we just want to encourage you to go out, live out your week in bringing the hope of Jesus into every home.